Hello, everyone. Welcome back to biology. We are discussing chapter 41, nutrition, and now it is time for us to see how our digestive system works. Let's start with this video.
Digestion takes place in the alimentary canal, also called the digestive tract or gastrointestinal tract. Basically, this structure is a tube that starts at the mouth and ends at the anus. Several vital organs and glands are connected to the alimentary canal and contribute digestive enzymes and other products to specific portions of the canal. Food is processed mechanically and/or chemically, depending on where it is in the alimentary canal. Food is chewed or processed mechanically by the teeth. At the same time, it's broken down by enzymes or processed chemically by saliva from the salivary glands. The esophagus transports food to the stomach, where mechanical and chemical processing continue. Food then enters the small intestine, where chemical processing is completed and the absorption of nutrients begins. The liver secretes substances required for the digestion of fats, and the gallbladder stores these substances before emptying them into the small intestine. The pancreas secretes enzymes and other substances into the small intestine to carry out chemical digestion. Finally, what's left of the food makes its way through the large intestine, where water is absorbed and feces are formed.
Okay, so that's a pretty brief introduction to what we're talking about in these next several slides. So, food processing begins in the oral cavity. That is a nice way to say your mouth. So your teeth are chewing, they're breaking the food into small pieces. Salivary glands are making saliva. Saliva is the spit in your mouth, and that saliva is used to lubricate your food. Saliva also contains something called mucus. Mucus is this mix of water and salts and cells and glycoproteins. That's what makes it kind of a little bit slimy. Saliva also contains amylase. Amylase is an enzyme that breaks down starch into smaller sugars, sometimes as small as disaccharides or sometimes smaller polypeptides, so that they can continue to be digested down to monomers through the rest of the digestive tract. After this happens, after you've chewed up your food, your tongue forms your food into a bolus. That's like a little ball to help you swallow it. Your throat, or your pharynx, is a junction that opens to both the esophagus and the trachea. The esophagus is going to take it on down to the stomach, whereas the trachea is what goes to your respiratory tract. So the trachea leads to the lungs. That should be closed off so that you don't inhale your food. Instead, the esophagus opens to bring your food down to the stomach. And food moves down to the stomach by something called peristalsis. Peristalsis is just like these contractions of your smooth muscle that help keep food moving as it's progressing through your whole digestive tract here. So the smooth muscle kind of like squeezing to keep that food moving through. At the bottom of the esophagus, there is a cardiac sphincter. It's just a circular ring that can open and close. The sphincter, a contracted sphincter, will seal off the esophagus while the trachea is open, so that you are either breathing or eating, but not doing both at once. When a bolus of food enters the pharynx, you have this swallowing reflex. And when you swallow, the larynx will move, and that tips the epiglottis to cover it moves it down to stop food from entering the trachea. So here, this is going to just close off. The sphincter above the esophagus opens, and that allows this food to go down the esophagus. Then the trachea will reopen, this epiglottis will move back up, and peristalsis moves the food down this esophagus to the stomach. If by chance you do have food reaching the windpipe, there's a coughing reflex. So you cough and then swallow to get food back down the right place. Okay, the mammalian trachea and esophagus both connect to what? The large intestine, the stomach, the pharynx, the rectum, the epiglottis. We will come back in our next chapter and we'll talk about breathing, and we'll talk about how the epiglottis and the trachea and the larynx work. But for now, we're going to stick with just talking about how we're able to digest our food in this chapter. Okay. Then absorption and elimination are going to occur. Absorption is the uptake of small molecules by body cells. Elimination is the passage of undigested material out of the digestive system. So in the stomach, we have chemical digestion happening. And there's two things in gastric juice. Gastric juice means that's juice in the stomach. Two components help to liquefy your food. One is hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is a super strong acid that is able to break a lot of stuff down. So that will disrupt the extracellular matrix that holds together the cells in meat and plant material. So you're breaking down your food, whether it's a meat or plant material. Gastric juice has a pH of 2, which is strong enough to dissolve iron. It kills most bacteria, so that helps you not get sick from bacteria you may have eaten. It also denatures proteins, which makes it easier for those proteins to be broken down into smaller peptides and all the way down to amino acids. When hydrochloric acid has opened up, denatured those proteins, there's an enzyme called pepsin. Pepsin is an enzyme that requires an acidic environment to function. So if it is in your body outside of the stomach, it's not going to be able to break down proteins. But inside the stomach, where it's very acidic, it's going to start breaking proteins into smaller polypeptides. Pepsin is cleaved from a larger molecule called pepsinogen. And there is this positive feedback that just keeps pepsinogen cleaving pepsin. So you have more and more pepsin to be able to digest all the food that you've eaten. There are muscular activities also in the stomach, or mechanical digestion, that helps the stomach be able to break down food besides just hydrochloric acid and pepsin. So muscle contractions in your stomach, contracting and relaxing, are churning the chyme about every 20 seconds. Helps just kind of keep things breaking down. It also makes sure all food is in contact with gastric juice, and that food mixed with gastric juice is what is creating the chyme. And the stomach movement will move food into the small intestine, still that peristalsis, squeezing movement. It typically moves the chyme into the small intestines about 2 to 6 hours after you've eaten. And there's a sphincter that opens so the chyme will enter into the small intestine. If we go back a slide, I do want to go through this, kind of how our stomach content are not able to digest anywhere else in your body. So you do have a lot of mucus being made in your stomach that helps protect those cells so your stomach cells aren't being broken down. But also your stomach cells are reproducing about every 2 or 3 days. You're going to have a new lining of your stomach. So just as a result of all that hydrochloric acid and pepsin, it's kind of a harsh environment inside that stomach. So your stomach cells are constantly reproducing, so you have fresh, healthy cells available to line your stomach. Okay, so how does swallowed food reach the stomach of a weightless astronaut in orbit? If they swallow food, are we just relying on gravity to pull our food down to our stomach? And if you leave the Earth and you're in orbit without gravity, would you still be able to swallow your food? How is that going to happen?
The stomach and its secretions. One of the major functions of the stomach is to process food into a liquid suspension. The stomach does this by producing a digestive fluid called gastric juice and mixing it with the food. This figure illustrates how gastric juice is produced. The stomach is a hollow organ, and the space inside this organ is called the lumen. As you can see in this cross-sectional view of the stomach wall, the interior surface of the stomach contains numerous infoldings, or pits, lined by epithelium. The spaces inside the pits are part of the lumen. To understand how gastric juice is produced, let's zoom in on the cells that make up the lining of one of these pits. There are 2 types of cells that secrete the main components of gastric juice. One type of cell, the chief cell, secretes a protein called pepsinogen into the lumen. The other type of cell that contributes to gastric juice is the parietal cell. It actively transports hydrogen ions into the lumen. Chloride ions then diffuse into the lumen through channels in the parietal cell membrane. Within the lumen, the hydrogen ions and chloride ions combine, forming hydrochloric acid, HCl. How does hydrochloric acid affect the properties of the gastric juice in the lumen? The hydrochloric acid that forms in the lumen makes gastric juice very acidic, giving it a pH of about 2. The low pH of gastric juice aids digestion in several ways. It disrupts the extracellular matrix that binds cells together in meat and plant material. It denatures proteins in food, exposing their peptide bonds for later attack by digestive enzymes. And it converts a few molecules of pepsinogen to an active protein-digesting enzyme called pepsin. Pepsin has an optimal pH that's close to 2, so it works best in the very acidic environment of gastric juice. In addition to beginning the digestion of proteins in food, pepsin converts additional molecules of pepsinogen to pepsin. Those pepsin molecules, in turn, convert remaining pepsinogen molecules to pepsin. This process is an example of positive feedback because the product of the reaction, pepsin, catalyzes further reaction. The positive feedback loop drives to completion the conversion of pepsinogen to pepsin. What might happen if hydrochloric acid was produced inside the parietal cells instead of in the lumen of the stomach? If hydrochloric acid was produced inside the parietal cells, it would denature proteins inside the cells. But because hydrochloric acid is produced in the lumen instead of in the parietal cells, the proteins inside the parietal cells aren't denatured by the very low pH. However, each parietal cell and chief cell has part of its external surface in contact with the lumen. What protects this surface from being digested by gastric juice? A layer of mucus lining the lumen provides some protection. This protection isn't complete, though, so the cells must be continually replaced through cell division. The mucus that lines the lumen is secreted by a third type of cell, the mucus cell. Mucus cells also line the pits. As the cells lining the pits continue their secretions, gastric juice passes from the lumen inside the pits to the main chamber of the stomach. Therefore, the pits function as glands and are called gastric glands. Muscular contractions of the stomach wall mix the gastric juice with food, promoting further breakdown of the suspended food particles. Sphincters at each end of the stomach keep this mixture contained within the stomach. The upper sphincter opens periodically to allow more food to enter from the esophagus. As digestion proceeds, the lower sphincter begins to open rhythmically, allowing the mixture to enter the small intestine one squirt at a time.
Okay, I do want to throw in one definition here. I know they use that word lumen a lot here, and lumen refers to what's inside. So the lumen of that gland is what's inside the gland. The lumen of a vessel is what's inside a vessel. That's what lumen means, is when we're talking about the lumen of the alimentary canal, we're talking about what's inside the alimentary canal. Okay, which of the following is not a major activity of the stomach? A, mechanical digestion. B, hydrochloric acid secretion. C, mucus secretion. D, nutrient absorption. Or E, enzyme secretion. The stomach does 4 of those things. One of them it does not. Okay, we're going to pick up talking about our intestines in the next video. So I will see you back for that. I hope you're having a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.